This is my review of the Blackwidow keyboard. Blackwidow is Razer's first mechanical keyboard using Cherry MX Blue keys. These type of keyboards have individual switches underneath each key. The dimension of this keyboard is 18.7 inches by 6.7 and 1.2 inches thick. It weighs about 3 pounds and it's a little bit heavier than your typical keyboard. As I mentioned before, these are mechanical keys, and the mechanical keys are tactile and clicky, which you can hear here. And they're featured mostly in like very expensive keyboards like Philco, Das Keyboard, SteelSeries 7G. The reason why these are very popular among gamers is that the mechanical keys reduce fatigue in very long gaming sessions. These are, basically games that involves a lot of keystrokes, like StarCraft 2, real-time strategy type of games. And over the length of the match, you have to perform a lot of actions, what they call action per minute, APM measurements. And they're basically multitasking skills that you have to apply to the game in order to win the game. And a lot of times professional players are able to achieve 300 actions per minute, meaning 300 clicks. And if you don't have these type of mechanical keys, fatigues will wear in because these keys actuate before they ever reach the bottom of its seats. So you can press softly and still maintain a fast action per minute and be able to multitask much faster. It also helps with typing as well. It's also very durable, supposedly, for mechanical keyboards. They're clocked at 50 million keystrokes, so you can bet that these keyboards will last a long time if you purchase one. Also, this particular model features 5 macro keys here on the left, and you can actually record macros, which are a series of keystrokes, by pushing one button. You can record those on the fly as you play your games. This is kind of good and bad, I guess. There's pros and cons for this kind of setup that Razer has with the 5 keys on the side. It makes the keyboard slightly wider, but I think the pro of it being placed here are these 5 keys are at a good location because they're on your left hand side, and you can actuate these keys while concentrating on moving your mouse. Also, there's 10 profiles that you can store the key settings that you can store using the software, which I won't go into in this video. Unfortunately, that's also there's a con for this because the 10 profiles have to be set locally on your computer. You can't take this keyboard with you, and it will retain its memory of the macros that you store in these 5 keys or any of the keys. So that's kind of a drag. If only they would incorporate the type of memory that they have in the mouse in their keyboard, that would be phenomenal. Also, it has a function. This particular keyboard has a gaming function, which you kind of can see here. It's got a green light here, and here is a function gaming, and it's got a gaming mode. And what it does actually is it takes the function out of the function of the Windows key out of the keyboard. So if you hit it during the game, it won't kick you out of the game. That has happened to me once before, so I can tell you that was quite annoying. And this is a good function to have. In fact, I have it on all the time because I don't use the Windows key too much. But when you play games, this could be a problem for a lot of gamers, especially in the heat of battle. You may end up hitting the Windows key and switch to a Windows mode and lose, and that happened to me before. Also, this keyboard is a little bit cheaper than the other mechanical keyboards on the market. I mentioned before, Philco, Das Keyboard, and SteelSeries all have mechanical keyboards, but this one is cheaper. It's a cheaper alternative for them, but it doesn't mean that it's not as good as the other ones with all these different functions. So it's kind of a bargain too. It also has an in-key rollover, although it doesn't have simultaneous key press problems but it can only support 6 multiple key presses because it's a USB keyboard, as compared to, for example, SteelSeries G7, which has PS2 connections, which can give you basically as many keys as you can when you hit, and you don't have to worry about keys not registering. And that's a big problem, I think, in real-time strategy games like StarCraft, because when you're doing 60 keys per second, or even something even higher than that, you may run into a situation where when you hit 2 keys at the same time and one of them doesn't register, and that could be a problem during the gameplay. It also has multimedia key controls that you see up here. It's good to have that handy because it makes it a lot easier to control your media on your computer while you're listening to music or anything like that. But it also requires the function key in order for that to happen. It's not a they're not dedicated media keys, so that's kind of an improvement I wish they could have made, but it's not a deal breaker. So here's basically I kind of went over the functionality of the keyboard, and I kind of pointed out a couple of the cons that the keyboard has. One of the big one is obviously no memory for storing profiles, so even if you store functions and macro keys, you can't take that with you. Also, the keyboard's a little bit wide, but that's no big deal. But I have a keyboard tray down here, and it won't fit there, so it's kind of a drag. Another big thing about gaming keyboard is they like backlit keys, and this keyboard actually doesn't have one. You have to buy the Ultimate Edition, which costs extra $50, and to me it's like a no-brainer. There's no reason that I really need a backlit keyboard, but if you're into that kind of thing, you'll have to look into the Blackwidow Ultimate keyboard in order to have all the keys backlit. It also, the keyboard itself is noisier than a normal keyboard, so some people may not be too used to it. It takes a little bit of getting used to in terms of the sound. So if you have to play in a quiet environment, this type of mechanical keyboard may not be right for you. Also, it's got very shiny frame out here, which I mentioned in the unboxing, and it actually picks up some smudges. Not terribly visible, but it is kind of a fingerprint magnet, so you kind of have to clean it up once in a while, which is not a big deal. Also, the keys here that you see on top, and some of these over here, are obviously keys with multifunctions that you see on a normal keyboard. But the multifunction part of them, as you can see here, 1 through 0s are pretty visible, but the symbols underneath them are actually a little bit hard to see. I wasn't able to see some of the symbols, and I was doing a chat, I guess, and I kind of mistyped some of the keys. So it's kind of a small nuance for me, but I think this could be improved. Also, they talked about in the design of the Razer Blackwidow keyboard, Razer actually pointed out that the function key, especially function 1, is shifted to the right a little bit as compared to the traditional layout of the keyboards. For me, for some reason, it's kind of a con, because in StarCraft 2, for example, idle workers are actuated by F1 keys here, and I guess I'm kind of used to the old F1 key layout style over here, so sometimes I mispress the F1. So I think actually for me it was a con because I wasn't used to it. It may take some getting used to, so possibly that those mistakes can be avoided in the future. But I just wanted to let you, the watcher, understand that this could pose a problem for some people. For me, it was a little bit, but it depends on what kind of games you play. Some of the other things, some of the other functions of the keyboard, for some of the features of the keyboard, I'm not sure whether it's pro or con. For example, there's braided cable that it uses, I mentioned in the unboxing. The braided cable isn't really necessary for a keyboard because you're not moving this keyboard too much. It's very good for anti-tangle. You don't have to worry about cords getting tangled because they're braided. But I think that's better suited for like a mouse because you're not really moving the keyboard. Also, there is supposedly the feature of really ultra fast polling rate, like a thousand hertz is the way the keyboard communicates with your computer. It's also not really necessary because there's almost no way that you can you can send 1,000 commands per second to your computer. You do that, you may have that with your mouse because it has to relay position, its laser position to the computer, but it's not really necessary in a keyboard. But it's good to have, I guess, so that it's very, very responsive. This font takes some getting used to because it's very different than the normal font that you see on the normal keyboard. But it's not a big deal. I think it's actually quite cool looking, to be honest with you. But I guess the font is kind of gonna be a little odd for some people. There's definitely no USB or audio pass-through of this keyboard. Some of the other keyboards, like SteelSeries 7G, for example, does, but you pay a premium for that. I don't really use them since my computer's right next to me, so it's not a big deal. And somebody pointed out online that there's no extra gap between the caps lock and the A button. So the person stated that sometimes he would actually actuate the caps lock by accident while hitting A. Haven't experienced that at all during my play, so I would say that could be a con for some people, but I don't think it's a big difference, for me at least. So this is my review of the Blackwidow mechanical keyboard. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye bye.